and we're good to go. Alright, so sorry about that, but basically what I did was just looked up my photo and of course dragged it in, but we've already covered that as well. I've also already started by making a new 11 by 17 so that I can get my diagram started. So this happens to be actually a pretty good image. So it's coming in pretty detailed. It's got a lot of color. And as you can see, yeah, it's pink, but, well, in your case, on the projector, it looks a little purple. But there's several different shades going on here, right? And what's great about the computer is, of course, that we can analyze what's going on here. However, I can't just magically tell the computer, hey, analyze this flower, because, well, it has no idea that it's a flower. So the first thing that I would like to do for this diagram is actually remove anything that I don't need. So as I was mentioning before, this actually has a few flowers and we just need one. So the first thing that I could do is actually trace one out. So that one actually has a lot of rich color and texture to it that I think I want to grasp. And then it looks like I can sort of extract it out pretty easily too. So I'm going to go ahead and use my polygonal lasso tool. Yes, polygonal even though it's curved, because even though it looks curved, it's not really curved because it's actually still on a Cartesian plane, right? So we're going to have to use the best of our ability, and as you can see, even some are like two colors, right? I mean, on the projector that actually looks like one color because of the projector. But on my screen it actually looks like two different colors in one square. So it can get confusing. Don't zoom in too much, otherwise you'll be there all day long. But I'm just going to try and get that pinkish, purplish fuzz that's kind of right next to it. And I'm going to use the best of my ability to get straight lines. And you'll see why. Just because, well, even curves in the real world, they're made of straight lines because we can't see that small. But even in AutoCAD, you can't derive an angle measurement, right, from two curves. But I'm going to trace it to the best of my ability. I could also play around with the magnetic tool. It would probably work in this situation. You can get those little bumps in there. If I have the newest version of Photoshop, I do want to show you a trick. However, it's almost not fair, you know, compared to maybe the other tricks. I would say there's nothing wrong with tracing it like this though, just because you only have to do it once, and it's almost therapeutic. Right? You just gotta click. Kind of a sharp edge there, but that's alright. Once we zoom out, let's face it, you're not gonna see much of that. Does look like we need to get that part. Start to click a little bit faster. This is where I definitely like having a trackball for my mouse. And if I haven't mentioned it before, you definitely need a mouse interface, right? Don't really care what it is, but a trackpad is not going to cut it in architecture. In fact, I used to have this one professor at Texas Tech who would ask us to leave if we didn't have our mouse, right? Because sometimes he had to drive the computer, and he was not going to drive a computer with no mouse. So if you don't have a mouse yet, get one. Right, you can go to Goodwill, get a wired one for like $5. But yeah, definitely is going to make this process a little bit easier. And again, I do want to show you an easier way. So for the sake of time, I'm just going to go a little bit faster and a little bit less accurately. Still trying to get as close as possible, that way we can maybe see the difference. There might not be a huge difference actually. But going as fast as I can. Obviously it's going to be choppy there. Yeah, but just in case you haven't done this yet, everyone is basically required to. Because you gotta start somewhere, right? Anyway, we'll get the gist of it. And as you can see, once I start zooming out, the accuracy is there. Oh, a little water droplet. We can get that out though. We don't need it for the color of our flower. We just need this green, this rich. There's almost like several yellows and greens in there. We'll get the leaf too, why not? Come on, leaf. And close enough. Oh, Looks like I may have gotten the wrong flower there. It's alright. Get them both and erase one. Of course, I'm just hitting Control plus sign to zoom and zoom out. Right? But now that I at least have that selection, I do have to do 2 steps because I accidentally kept both of those flowers. Missed that a little bit there, but that's alright. Let's go ahead and erase what we don't need. So I'm going to select the inverse. So I'm going to right click, select inverse, so the opposite of what I need. And of course erase what I don't need. I don't want the computer to get kind of that background orange colors in there and all that kind of stuff. And then obviously we still need to remove one of those flowers that's looking kind of funny. So I can do Control D as in dog to deselect. And of course, let's try a different tool. Check it out. You be the guest if it works or not. Right? This one's called the magnetic tool. And we can change its tolerance and things like that, but just as default, it's never really worked for me so well. And as you can see, it kind of just, once I start clicking, it just goes. So it can be kind of a mess. So usually I have to hit escape a lot, but you can try it. Basically all you got to do is drag along and it's trying to find it for you. And as you can see, it sometimes gets it, sometimes doesn't. And of course, while you're moving accidentally like that, it is less forgiving. So, as you can see, I'm not a huge fan of the magnetic tool. However, there is also a hand tool, so you can kind of just draw by hand. Now, if you have a tracked mouse, it's a little bit easier. But again, a little bump here, a little bump there, that can be unforgiving. So, again, a huge reason why I use the polygonal lasso tools because the control aspect. Can definitely control it, I think, a lot better. And of course we can always zoom in to get a little bit more accuracy, especially on these curves. But I definitely want to show you at least the tried and true way. I would say even though this way does take the longest, it's definitely the most accurate, right? And it tells you a lot about what you're looking at. To your brain, right? Even subconsciously, it's telling you a lot of the information that you want to see and want to stick out, right? Oh, let's go ahead and erase that part. Sweet. All right, now we got our flower, and now we can start to look at the colors for the computer. What I would like you to select is anywhere from 5 to 7 colors. Right, maybe 3 colors if you have like a calla lily, even though arguably I think you could find even more. So the first thing I want to do is actually make a copy of it, just in case I mess it up or want to try something else. So one of the best things about a computer is the ability to make multiple copies, right? So I'm just going to do Command C, Command V, and of course make a copy and save it for later, right? Don't necessarily need it yet. Now I want to start thinking about the diagram because after all, I do want to make this simpler for the person. I even want to name out the colors, right? And of course show you how to get that information. So the first thing that we could do is simplify this drawing, right? So I'm going to go ahead and take that layer. I'm going to go to Image, Adjustments. I'm going to go to Polarize or Posterize, sorry. Posterize. And it's going to begin to almost give it a GTA look. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Grand Theft Auto, but the cover has a posterized effect to it, right? It almost looks cartoony, and it's been reduced for its level of colors. Now, this is what I meant by at least 3 because, well, if I choose 2, there's not a lot of flower to see there, right? At least 3, okay, we're starting to get some color midtones in there. 5 and 7, right? And as you can see, there's quite a bit on 7, so I'm going to stick with 7 for this one. Now, the next thing to do is to think about how I want to abstract it. So, well, I could think of squares, right? Little squares of color that maybe name the colors and things like that. Sorry, the square might not be easy to see on that projector. Right, I could do circles. I could right click, switch to circles. I could hold shift and make sure they are circles, right? So there's a couple of options I could do there. And what I like to do is actually just brush real quick, something that I could hold on to, right? Now, I wouldn't want to do that on my original layer, so I'm going to go actually and call that flower. Oop. Double click on layer, flower. Oops. And that was the extra copy. So, I want to stay organized. But I probably should have just made a new layer. That way I can transfer these to those. So I'm going to go ahead and do that again, even though it'll look like I'm doing nothing. I just transferred to those layers real quick. That way I can erase this one. This will also look like I'm doing nothing. Oh, didn't get all of that one. So let's go ahead and brush that back. This will probably be very confusing for the recording, but I'm just switching that so that this actually stays on a layer, right? And of course the reasoning for that is, well, instead of black, I want these to actually be some of the colors that I'm seeing in here. Now, obviously, pick one. I don't want you to use squares and circles and triangles and, you know, just all sorts of different shapes to show these colors. But I just wanted to give you an example that a color swatch doesn't necessarily, you know, we could use that geometry to actually communicate easier, right? So the first thing I want to do is maybe extract, say, the darkest color. So I'm going to get my eyedropper tool, or I can hit the letter I, right? And it's look like this little ink blot guy. Now keep in mind I have this selected, so, and I'm on this layer. So if I click on this, you know, it might not find it. In our case, it was smart enough to be object smart. And it knows, of course, what color that I'm picking. You'll notice that it even changes your color swatch to the left, right? And what's nice is if you click on that color swatch, it'll tell us a lot of information about the exact color that it is. Now, I'm gonna have to look this up in the internet, right, and find out what the name of that color is, and you better believe that Sherwin-Williams has found a name for every single one of these colors.
There's to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars every year to name paints.
Oh yeah.
Hundreds of thousands of dollars.
I would love that job.
I would too.
This is chartreuse. It just is.
Yeah.
You know.
What are you printing up?
For
Design form. 3, 4.
up here, I believe. I gotta check the schedule.
Okay.
Yeah, I believe it's up here.
Okay.
But yeah, from there we can basically essentially click the color that we want. Right, so I'm gonna choose maybe my darkest purple in there. I kind of like that. And I want to go ahead and fill this in for layer 1. So I'm gonna hit brush and just brush that in. I'm gonna brush it in several times. That way I can really get a sense of that color. And yeah, it's pretty dark. Now I can deselect, and now it's a part of that layer. I'm just gonna go ahead and get rid of this circle one for today. That was just kind of an example. I'm gonna stick to squares because I like them. Now, I don't have to do that all over again, and I don't want to because, well, I want these swatches to be the same size. So I'm gonna copy and paste that square or that layer again. The computer's even trying to help me up and layer it and make sure that it's nice and balanced with each other, or aligned, I should say. So I can take this square, I can even turn this one off, and I can re-highlight it by just actually doing my selection tool, or I like to use my magic wand, which is the letter W. However, you'll have to right click and switch it to magic wand tool. And I like to click so that I don't have to do any selecting, and I can basically select the inverse to get that piece again. Now I want to get my next color, so I'm going to use my eyedropper tool. I'm trying to pick the next one up. Yeah, kind of a lighter pink there. Sweet. Go ahead and brush that one in a couple times and make sure it got rid of the previous one. I can go ahead and deselect, and now I have 2 colors, right? So on and so forth. We need all 4 colors, or 5 or 7, however you decide to choose. But what's interesting is we now are viewing it in a different way, right? So let's do one more for giggles. So again, why work harder when I can just copy and paste that? and the computer is even going to help me align those and keep them balanced. Right? Pretty sweet. I'm going to use my magic wand tool, basically highlight everything. Oh. You can also quick selection tool something as well. It again is part of that magic wand selection. So it really just depends. By default, I just like the magic wand tool. It sounds cool. So anyway, there are different ways to select stuff, but let's get another color in there. I kind of like this yellow going on. Again, I'm no longer looking at the flower, but I'm really studying the color, right? And what's popping out to me, what I notice stands out the most in terms of those levels of color. So again, eyedropper tool, letter I. Yeah, there's kind of like that rich yellow, earthy color to it. So again, gonna make a copy and push that in. Or in my case, paint it. And those should print out pretty well. Now, the last thing that I want to do is, of course, add text and things like that. However, most of the time I by rules, say use, of course, Illustrator for your text. However, you can use the text tool. Right? You can use vertical or horizontal. I'll let it be up to you how you want to communicate this color. Right? However, let's of course make it legible. I never use true black because it's usually too harsh. What I would say is be considerate of your line weight. Right? You can say a lot with the darkness and lightness of your text. And so on and so forth. Now, where do we get those colors? So I might need to use my eyedropper tool again, double click, and essentially get this number. So I'm going to go ahead and copy it and paste it right into Google. I mean, why not? In our case, yeah, let's go to Google. Let's paste that in. Color match. So match paint by color, yada, yada, yada. Match color code data to commercial colors. We might have to do some digging on this one. After all, these links kind of change. I'm more familiar. It was actually called Adobe Scheme. Adobe Classic might have it. Let's see what that's about. Of course, we have the world's slowest internet today. But what I would say is, of course, try to match the same web color. And that might actually help if we put in web color. And there you go. Color value. Of course, that's the one. Black shadow text. However, this one doesn't seem to give us the name. And that's okay. Let's try something else. Oh, there it was. Color names. However, I don't think we could just scroll through here and find the exact color. That would take forever. We can choose them on their hex value. I guess we could do Command F and see if we can find that. Doesn't look like it though. So I'd imagine we'd have to flip through these pages, which ain't nobody got time for that, right? Click here to see all 140 colors by name or by hex value. So I don't know, this site's actually looking pretty good, but maybe doesn't necessarily have them in list format. Yeah, I'm more familiar with the color scheme generators. Well, you learn something new every day. Let's keep going. Oh, found a match here. What is this color? Clearly it has a lot of magenta. This one definitely seems much more technical information. It's even got alternatives. Mini samples next to other colors. Color blindness similar. Wow. So obviously there's a lot of information about this color. Maybe I couldn't find the necessarily the name though. So what do? I don't know. Maybe there's more information that talks about this color. For instance, what this color is made up of. or maybe some interesting information about its triad, right? Or maybe it's alternatives. So I don't know. However, I am just looking for the name, but am open to other information. So obviously I think these are what it's laying out there for us. Clearly it's close to some sort of magenta color though. You know, I'd be interested in actually going to Sherwin-Williams. Let's check it out. And the reason I say this is I can't tell you how many times in the world that I've had a client go, I want it to be this color, here's the photo, right? And I'm sitting there going, well, I need to make sure that it's this exact color. So why not, you know, treat it the way exactly it would be? I'm sure Sherwin-Williams has some sort of color generator. Wow, aerospace. General industry. Block it. Block it. Well, apparently there's 35% off today. Yeah, the internet's not being very helpful today. Perhaps, and hopefully your internet will be, of course, faster than today. I don't want to find a store. I want to find a color, sir. Anyway, Sherwin-Williams probably isn't going to be the best way to go. However, there's definitely alternatives. My perfect color. Yeah. And sometimes I guess you're not going to get a result unless you have the name. So, I don't know. I will let you research that for yourself. However, we do need some information about this. So, you know, even if I couldn't come up with anything, I can at least put the name of the web color. However, keep in mind, some of these colors go by different names. So, for instance, edit undo. If I abstract that color again, not sure why my computer's going terribly slow. Let's try that again. It's like horribly slow. Well, let's turn off the internet. Could be my fans as well. Let's turn those up. And that should be okay. There we go. But yeah, even by default, it turns into an eyedropper tool in that color box. However, you'll notice that it's not picking that color, or at least it's having a hard time. Also, probably is because I'm recording as well. So, probably not time for a new laptop. Oh boy. Anyway. So, that color can go by different names. So, for instance, if we start switching or clicking on some of these, right, in different instances, right, it goes by a different place, right? So we can look at it in CYMK, and of course this might all just kind of sound foreign to us. We can look at it in web color only, and again it gives us a different number. Check that out, right? So now that I've switched it to web color, and I don't necessarily want to try the internet again while I'm recording, so I'll let you of course find that information, but keep in mind that web colors might be a little bit easier. They're usually a little bit more simplified. They say that we have 16.7 million colors that are visible within the human eye of our visible spectrum. However, the web, I believe, only uses a 256-bit, right? So basically down to 256 colors rather than 16.7 million. You'd think it'd make a bigger difference than that, but still looks pretty good, right? Anyway, for the sake of diagram though, at least strive to get that color, and of course 7 different ones. I would also like you to title it as well, and you're welcome to even put the description or other information, right? You might actually find some graphs. You might find that actually you accidentally picked a color scheme that's in this. So one last thing that I did want to show you guys is actually a color scheme generator. So okay, let's try and use the internet again. Come on, internet. And simply I type in color scheme generator. However, there are so many now. So color scheme generator. But I find them pretty useful in terms of, let's just click on the first one, colors.co. Looks promising. Howdy. Maybe he's from Texas. Wow, it looks like they have kind of like a whole Chrome extension going on. I don't know, might want to check this out when you have better internet than I do right now. But you might very well find that there's actually a particular color scheme to your flower. So, worth taking a look at. Let's see if we can click on the start generator thing. And obviously, I want you to explore a little bit. I don't know everything, and I never will, right? So maybe find something to bring to the table, right? In terms of what's being asked here, right? And of course, looking at that color, right? It says hello, let's go. Clearly, this is made by Gen Z. That's cool. Or at least going to that market. I dig it though. Pretty interesting. A lot of information here, and actually a really interesting way of how they're diagramming color, right? Specifically for a website. You all right there, Brianna? Maybe, maybe not. Anyway, there's those numbers again, right? So clearly this one might be a really good resource, and why I was mentioning just use a color scheme generator. So this one's actually looking pretty good, colors.co, and that's pretty easy to remember. I'd write that down, right? Just in case, you know, there's no audio in this video, or maybe I don't get to upload it until a little bit later tonight. Actually, that might be the case. Wife's working late tonight. Anyway, but definitely worth your time. And I don't see a search bar, but gosh, it just looks like there's going to be one. Especially since this looks like it's an app for actually different platforms as well. It looks like we can even take our own picture. Holy crap, could we put our flower in here? Maybe. And take these colors? Maybe. Maybe it actually finds a color scheme generator for our flower itself. But again, keep in mind that you don't want all the colors of that image. Remember, we had to remove some, right? Such as those weird colors we saw in the background. So I don't know. Maybe what I did here is actually enough information to export that, put it into my color scheme generator, and see what it produces. I won't do that for this tutorial just because, you know, that's kind of the point, is of course explore this. But yeah, hopefully that makes more sense of what I'm asking for in terms of a visual. However, it doesn't have to look exactly like this. You could decide to give it a different hierarchy. Maybe this goes over there. Maybe it adds up to this. That might be kind of interesting if we see a little plus sign, plus sign, plus sign, and it sort of like equals that. Again, just kind of throwing some ideas out there. One of my favorite places to get ideas, as you guys know, is of course Pinterest. And I'm just going to look up color diagram. I really do too. Color diagram. Maybe even type in flower in there. See if anybody else has been tasked with the exact same task. But it doesn't look like it. Nah, you know, I might have been too specific for Pinterest. There's something sort of familiar. For the most part, it's a bit Pinteresty on this one. There's a nice diagram. Interesting color wheel going on there. That might be an interesting way to view color. Let's take the word flower out there. That's a little too broad maybe for Pinterest. Color diagram, probably going to give us a little bit more scientific. Yeah, you know, definitely a color scheme. That's pretty interesting. Kind of a large format photo, and then actually showing us the photo compared to the black and white drawing of it. That's pretty interesting. Oh, that's really interesting. Might be kind of interesting to have your flower, especially if it's like spiraled in the middle, How cool would that be? And sort of extract the colors right out of it and show their secondary color schemes to those colors. Because you could really expand on this. You don't have to stick with just 7 colors, guys. Let's face it, this thing, this diagram, like I said, every drawing should be beautiful, right? What's wrong with Photoshop? Well, usually the computer takes the beauty right out of these things, right? So of course we have to come back and organize and keep that beauty there, right? Anyway, hopefully some good ideas. Any questions about what we just went over, guys? For the most part? Now, let's go over the last part. So what I would like to see for Friday is an attempt at these 2 diagrams, right? So I definitely want to see your overlays and those 2 light and form, and of course whatever you choose to be that 3rd one, right? You could decide maybe a different way of extracting color and actually colorize that. That might be kind of interesting. I would like to see this color diagram, and as you can tell, it shouldn't take too much of your time, right? Even me just sort of fiddling around, viewing it, and all the different changes of the internet, we can get somewhere, right, to say the very least. But the idea is to have something preliminary. That way we can, of course, discuss it and get you some feedback so that you can work on these during the weekend, right? So yeah, what I would like to see for Friday is a preliminary of everything. So we need to see the photos, color diagram, the overlays, and you're welcome to bring more to the table, right? If you found if you found 20 images and you really want to show us some of the inner details, maybe you found somebody who dissected this thing, maybe you found a video. We have a projector in the jury room. I'd be glad to hook up my computer and listen to an old guy in 1965 talk about a flower. I don't mind at all. In fact, sometimes those are the most inspirational because they talk about stuff in a very serious way, right? Anyway, hopefully maybe you found some books, scan those things. Maybe you found somebody else talking about it. Maybe there's an entire story dedicated to it. Or, as I was mentioning last time, the symbology factor, or maybe other spiritual or religious factors about the culture behind these flowers as well. Anything that could be inspirational towards design, guys, you are hopefully getting the picture by now, right? Architecture really is inspired by everything else, not usually just architecture, right? And previous architecture that came before us. It really comes from nature, and in our case, understanding biomimicry. In our case as well, understanding color, form, and the way in which it reacts with light. I don't think too hard, right? We could also develop and start to look at the structure, maybe how it's put together. I know Will was mentioning his is a little bit different. It eats stuff, right? And not most flowers do that, so I can imagine maybe there's a diagram explaining some of that information and cycles as well. Anyway, questions, guys? Comments, concerns? Obviously, I'm going to end the class a little bit early, but please, of course, use this time wisely. I would get started on the photo color diagram. It's easy, right? Most of you guys probably already have a photo and can easily get started. So I'll go ahead and end the recording if there's no questions though. Maybe any Photoshop questions? It could be left field. We get it recorded. Somebody might have that question too.
11 by 17?
Correct. 11 by 17. Any other? 2 photos? 2 diagrams. Yeah. Absolutely. Good questions? Nothing else? Going once, going twice. Just on trace. Yeah, they don't necessarily have to be scanned yet, unless, as I was mentioning, you might be like, oh, I could use this for my color diagram. So, don't get me wrong. I like to leave it broad because, I mean, don't get me wrong, I'll give you some direction, but I want to see what you bring to the table. Right? I don't want you just to check the boxes for me. Oh, I check the boxes. I got to see in class. I want you to go above and beyond. I want to know about this flower. And it should be a little easier than, say, like an architectural site now, right, where you're being asked to see somebody else's vision. I'm asking for your interpretations and your either objective or subjective information about this flower. Good question. Anything else, guys? All right, leave it there. And thank goodness it was recording.